I did hear.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being with us. Please settle down. We'll start with the session.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Ritesh.
And I, Shubham,
would like to extend a warm welcome to all of our esteemed speakers, our panelists, as well as our audience to the Samsung Open Source Conference India, also known as SOSCON India. This event would not have been possible without the support of our exclusive partners, the Linux Foundation, London Stock Exchange Group, IEEE ComSoc Bangalore chapter, as well as our media partners, Electronics for You and Open Source for You.
I would like to brief you about SOSCON. SOSCON is the forum where we share our knowledge and experiences with open source community. It was first held in South Korea in 2014 and has been held in India since 2020. SOSCON India has been held by Samsung R&D Institute India, Bangalore since 2020, and now we are in its 4th edition. The conference covers the theme of generative AI, IoT, wallet, and blockchain.
We extend a warm welcome to all of you at SOSCON India 2023. And without further ado, let us move on to our first speaker of the day, Daniel Park. Daniel Park is the head of Samsung Open Source and Open Tech. He has spent over 20 years with Samsung, working in various capacities. His key focus areas include IoT, web, AI, and 5G networking. In addition, he is also a board member with Linux Foundation. He has also opened some Open Connectivity Foundation with Intel and made it the global number one consortium. Today, he will give us a brief about the open source journey at Samsung. Let us all give a warm applause to Daniel. Thank you, Daniel. Please take it.
All right. Good morning and good afternoon in my side, and welcome to the Samsung Open Source Conference, SOSCON India. And my name is Daniel Pa, head of Open Source Group in Samsung Research Korea. Samsung Research is a key organization for advanced research and development in Samsung Electronics. Today I'm so glad to be here to speak about Samsung Open Source in India. And as pointed out in the beginning, SOSCON began since 2014 in Korea to collaborate with open source developers. And our efforts had been expanded to other countries from 2021. In fact, SOSCON global start here in India. Therefore, I'm so proud of having a keynote speech in here today. Next one. Open source is definitely a core of Samsung software because we believe that the practice of open source is the key to preparing the future technologies in Samsung Electronics. By opening up to external communities, we at Samsung can work with the smartest people, no matter where in the world they are. We'll make effort to open up what we've working on to collaborate with various developers, and as a result, to drive further innovation. we know that we cannot do this alone. We are in Korea, Seoul, and globally collaborating with 6 countries for our open source journey all together. If you need more details, please come to our website, opensource.samsung.com, where you'll be able to see our effort and our results and what's going on in our open source area. Next page. In principle, open source, which is a combination of open and source, right? And in other words, the meaning of source is not limited to software. Recently, artificial intelligence and map data and chipset, RISC-V, and more technical domains are actively adopting open source value for their development culture and collaboration with developers. So open source is everywhere today, definitely everywhere. And this value and awareness will be widely increased more and more in practical industries. Next page. 3 years ago, very good news and surprise, result came to me. Samsung ranked 4th out of 150 companies in the World Benchmarking Alliance survey in 2021. The WBA launched its very first digital inclusion benchmark in 2020, which evaluated companies' progress in improving access to technology, enhancing digital skills, fostering truthworthy use, and innovating both openly and ethically. In their report, Innovation Index in particular is the highest score, and they said Samsung shows leadership with strong support for open source. To be honest, we didn't intend for this result, and even we didn't realize this alliance, frankly speaking, at the time. We did our best, what we usually did, and our effort and our result was proved by them as one of innovation activity. So we do believe open source is innovation, and we will strive for open and collaboration in our development continuously. Next pages. More than 70%, or in some cases, up to 90% of software in Samsung products are open source. It doesn't mean our products are not possible without open source. And our open source journey began in early 2000 with Linux kernel in PDA devices. This is a long time ago. At the time, we were not knowledgeable on open source culture and ecosystem, and just adopting them for our development. We were one of heavy users and beneficially in open source areas. And that time we didn't contribute a lot to community. And after that, software platform changed a lot, and Android came up in the market, and we collaborated with Google for our business, and it made our developers to realize and recognize open source potential more and more. And I remember in 2012 we collaborated with Intel when it developed Tizen platform, and we know Linux Foundation, and eventually we joined in Linux Foundation as a platinum member from the time. Currently, we are actively and closely, collaborating with the Linux Foundation as a member of the board, and I do really appreciate their support for Samsung. And in our, next speaker, Jim will speak about Linux Foundation activity. And thanks a lot, Jim. After that, IoT, OIC or OCF, and as well as 5G networking, security, media, and currently semiconductor area, our most researches are based upon open source. So without open source, we can imagine any sort of innovation. We are continuously partnering with various software developer communities all over Korea and as well as all over the globe. SOSCON India, which is one of our efforts to expand community collaborations. And through this, we are having meaningful technology exchanges with open source developers in the advanced research topic. Finally, open innovation and collaborations are essential for developing and scaling advanced technologies. Software developers are the best example of this. The numerous examples and best practice in software communities show us just how important open innovation and collaborations are. These principles enable us to set shared goals and quickly resolve complex issues together. Most smartest people work for someone else, and we will continue our effort toward open source and its full potential with the developers like you. Thank you, and please enjoy SOSCON India. And unfortunately, I can come this time, but hopefully I look forward to seeing and meeting you all in next SOSCON in person, and have a social meeting and discuss a lot of fun things. Thank you, our India R&D people to prepare SOSCON event today, and hope you guys enjoy our event today. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel, for the wonderful keynote. I'm sure this helped each one of us understand the open source journey at Samsung. Now it's time for our second keynote of the day by Mohan Rao. Mohan is the Corporate Vice President and Chief Technology Officer at Samsung Research Institute, Bangalore. He has spent over 25 plus years with Samsung in various capacities. He currently heads the end-to-end technology development, including communication protocols, IoT, camera, AI, and services. He also builds the technology vision, strategy, design thinking, and software engineering across Samsung India. We request Mohan to talk about the open source efforts in SRIB. Please join me in welcoming Mohan onto the stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. If you are around, I think huge round of applause for his keynote. And really, it is very exciting and summarizing that what Samsung is doing in the open source arena. Actually, open source is becoming like open innovations, open source, open models, open data, open whatnot. Right? Everything is getting open. Right? So that is the openness and collaboration that he talked about it. Today, let me warmly welcome all the people who are here and the online for this SOSCON India chapter for 2023. So like our organizers mentioned about, this is the 4th edition of the SOSCON, and it's very unique because we are having we are conducting in full hybrid mode at this moment. So far in India, we have conducted only the online mode. So this is the first time we are doing the hybrid, both offline as well as online. So while I talk to you about our contributions, right? Before getting into this kind of slide, right? There might be at least 2 contributions might have made in the open source community across the world. before I complete my keynote today, there might be one repo might have been created somewhere in the world. So that's the power of open source today. That is the future of emerging technologies. This is some of the data that I'm talking about here. Almost half billion contributions in one particular year is happened the open source. Especially the trend that is happening in artificial intelligence, cloud native, and IoT, cybersecurity, as well as the decentralization. So SRIB is working as a technology expertise and technology prowess. We're following these particular trends and then created our center of excellences around these particular areas to contribute there. Right, please. So SRIB, last 2.5 decades of our expertise, our commitment, and our skills, our achievements created in these 6 technology focus areas. One is, of course, the communications, camera, artificial intelligence, on-device, smart things, or IoT, are the services. So these are the 6 areas that SRIB is doing very well from end to end into these particular technology areas. Last Silver Jubilee, 25 years when we celebrated, we unveiled our vision to become New Valley. New Valley means that the kind of innovations that need to happen will happen in the Bay Area. We'll bring it to the Bangalore and then create such kind of innovation in these technologies areas to contribute back to the Samsung Electronics global. With that particular vision, one of the key pillars is that ecosystem. How do we leverage this ecosystem? While leveraging the ecosystem means that working with the universities, working with the startups, working with the fellow partnerships, working with the various kinds of things. Also, open source is the best means to leverage these ecosystems because the kind of data, the kind of contributions, the kind of repos that are getting created in the open sources is enormous. So we feel that open source is going to create a good future in these particular technologies, especially the kind of trends that are happening at this moment. So today I will talk about what kind of contributions SRIB is making it in the past few years. We are very good at contributing into the ORAN and ONAP and ONAS in the communications area. We tied up with the various partners to make the Matter ecosystems because in IoT it's very important to have not just the devices. Devices are very fragmented. So we are thinking of created the Matter ecosystems last year, and then it is growing steadily along with the partners. And we have good expertise related to the web with the WebKit and contributing to the Chromium and WebKit open sources. So like that, even at the AI area, artificial intelligence area, our people are creating the SOTA models in the Hugging Faces open sources communities and etc. Year on year, around 50% growth we have seen with the contributions and the leadership positions that we have acquired. Let's move to the next slide. Today, I will talk about each of this particular area. What are the recent contributions that we made? ORAN software community is really, we are making very good contributions from the last 4 years. And the kind of contributions that we are making it using AI models to make the networks to predict the traffic volumes, and create the network. Because huge number of network resources are there. With the AI models, if we can predict well and then create that, use that network resources for the right manner, we can optimize several things. Because the sustainability, energy savings is the goal for the telecom networks. And ORAN is created such kind of fame, and then we have used this opportunity to contribute to the ORAN software community. And then many of the AI models are getting published in this ORAN software community. We are also tied up with the Virginia Tech, and then recently, and then creating the contributions in this open source community, utilizing some of the tools acquired from this open source. Today, I can proudly say that in the ORAN SC community, we hold #2 position in terms of the contributions. This requires a huge round of applause to all the contributors who are making the ORAN. This really helped the network business to grow and to accelerate the ORAN-based flexible network creations for the telecom operators. Next, please. Another thing is about IoT. So today, as I mentioned, the basic essentials required for the IoT has been done. There is a lot of easiness in onboarding the devices. There's a lot of data is getting exchanged through the cloud-to-cloud operation. All these things are established, but still, IoT is fragmented. There are many device vendors are coming up. There are many device manufacturers are creating the clouds. So last year, with the partnership with many big companies like Samsung, Google, Amazon, all of us sat together and then makes a Matter ecosystem. SmartLink Station is our first device in the world to make the Matter compliant device available to the community. There are a lot more contributions SRIB is making into the Matter, open source, as well as the Samsung is making it. And I could say, I will not mince my words that there will be almost a few tens of million devices available as of today, which are Matter compliant. That's the power of the Matter ecosystem is going. IoTVT and Matter is creating this kind of opportunity for all our IoT developers to contribute back there, so that the people can use these protocols and then make the Matter compliant devices. We are having backward compatibility systems also along with this Matter, because we have the dual RCP solutions to our hubs provided, so that these devices can be easily accommodated into the SmartLink ecosystem or Samsung devices ecosystems, so that the consumer will have better experience with these particular devices. So next 2 to 3 years, we can see that there are many people will be using, their homes will become smart home. There is a projection that 50 billion devices, connected devices, will be available by 2025. So with that, our population is 8 billion. We can imagine the per people how many devices people will use. That's where this Matter ecosystem is growing there. Next, please. Third one is about our web experience, how we are utilizing. So even though we have made the S Pen in our Galaxy series of the devices, this is to maintain the creative minds, artistic mind of the people to use this S Pen to create their own drawings, create their own sketches, create their own ways. The recent contribution into the Chromium and WebKit is that if you do the handwriting using that one, and it will convert to the text. That kind of engine has been supported in the Chromium, contributed by the SRI. So like this, we are creating very salient steps towards this open source community. But my appeal to the SRIB people and OSPO, the OSPO that is being created here, the open source program office, take to the all other technology areas as well as take this AI trends that is happening, generative AI trends that is happening, and then create that models available as SOTA models in the open community. That's the generative AI appeal that I'm making it for all the future and all the people who are joining in this SOSCON 2023 conference. This is the trend that is happening. There are so many foundation models, we are hearing it. Every day when we wake up and then there's some model which is creating the new use case using generative AI. And there are many methods like fine-tuning the models or creating the adapters and bringing the models to the on-device and making the compute to the next level. All such kind of research are happening. So this is the method where we can use this particular trend to contribute back to the open so that many people can use these models or foundation models to create their own use cases and create innovative products and services. So with that, let me tell you about what the SOSCON. It's all about the open sources, open models, open innovations, right? So we have started only in 2020. Now we have grown to the 2023 with the kind of teams that we have made it as a generative AI, which is a hot trend at this moment. Second is IoT and IoT and Meta. That is what people are talking about, how to make the smart homes, how to make the smart cars, how to make the whole experience seamless. Third is wallet, digital wallet, because India has taken very important and bold steps in terms of the UPI. So we are utilizing this UPI and then created a digital wallet in India, and everybody else outside India learning about these payment services and then using these particular payment services and trying to create similar kind of payment services outside. We will talk about the digital payments and blockchain, because when we talk about the compute is getting increased and generative AI is getting increased, security is going to hand in hand will pose the challenges. So how the blockchain will solve this kind of security related threats that is happening at the moment. So these are the four themes that we have decided to go with this particular conference. I'm sure we will have the who's who of this particular world are coming here and then talking about their own insights. I'm here to take one or two insights from each of this particular area and then try to utilize that in our regular day of the work. And I'm sure you will also carry home one or two insights and then take that learnings back home and then contribute in your own areas. Thank you so much for this opportunity and enjoy the rest of the session.
Thank you so much, Mohan, for the wonderful keynote. I'm sure all our open source contributors take great pride in the efforts that they do for open source, and it is very nice to see it being acknowledged. We move on now to the next keynote by Jim Zemlin. Jim's career spans three of the largest technology trends to rise over the last few decades: mobile computing, cloud computing, and open source software. At Linux Foundation, Jim works with the world's largest technology companies to help define future of the computing on server, in the cloud, and on a variety of mobile computing devices. His work at Linux Foundation gives him a unique and aggregate perspective on the global technology industry. Jim will share his insights on the open source industry trend. Jim, the stage is all yours.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with all of you today. Let me pull up my presentation. Can people see? my presentation?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm very happy to be with all today. I wish I could be there in person. India is one of my favorite places to travel to. Many of you, but my wife, her family is from India. This is a photo of my wife and daughter. And we often travel to India and enjoy spending time there and seeing friends and family. So next time, hopefully I'll be able to attend this event in person. Today I want to talk a little bit about the Linux Foundation and about major trends in open source that we're seeing happen and emerge around the world. Today our organization has over 3,000 member companies, non-NGOs, universities, and government organizations who participate in our projects. Every day at the Linux Foundation, over 800,000 developers work on nearly 1,000 critical open source projects, creating billions of dollars of value that companies like Samsung use to create products and services like this mobile device that folks use every day all over the world. Our organization has trained millions of developers and has become a major part of the modern technology supply chain. At the Linux Foundation, we're not just working on open source, we continue to expand the nature of collaborative innovation into new areas. Today, the Linux Foundation is one of the largest standards organizations in the world, creating critical industry standards around software bill of materials, audio and video sharing, and more. We have open hardware initiatives at the Linux Foundation in semiconductors, robotics, unmanned aerial vehicles, and more. We also are seeing the rise of a new form of collaboration in data sharing networks. These are large-scale data sharing arrangements that are being used to help train the kind of foundation models that we're all talking about in the area of large language models and artificial intelligence. But of course, the Linux Foundation is best known for our work in open source software. You just heard about the millions of open source projects in the world. Every minute, a new open source repository is created, and every day, thousands of new open source projects are spun up on GitHub. At the Linux Foundation, our job is to focus on the small number of projects that are most important to all of us. Projects such as the Linux kernel, PyTorch, which is a fundamental building block for artificial intelligence and machine learning applications. Things like RISC-V, Node.js, major building blocks of all modern computing. Even though there are millions of open source software, it turns out there's only a small number of projects that are critical to society and create multi-billion-dollar opportunity. Here's just an example of some of the work that we do at the Linux Foundation. Today, I know that you're talking about IoT, blockchain, and many other interesting topics around artificial intelligence and more. Our organization covers the most critical open source projects in all of those areas. In the area of blockchain, I'm sure many of you have heard of the Hyperledger project. In cloud computing, our Cloud Native Computing Foundation is home to projects like Kubernetes and hundreds more. We also are hosting efforts in vertical industries. In the energy sector, we're working with grid operators around the world to open source the software that's used to distribute energy in countries such as France and Germany in order to make energy distribution more efficient and reduce the impact of climate change around the world. We also are doing work in edge and IoT. We're seeing a ton of interesting new technology come out in that area particularly areas such as WebAssembly and a variety of new interesting applications that are specific to the ever-expanding nature of IoT and edge computing. Every day at the Linux Foundation, we convene hundreds of Zoom meetings, 28,000 community meetings every year. We bring together in person thousands of developers at over 150 events around the world, process millions of chat messages, emails, code commits, and much, much more. Our organization collectively represents the largest software company in the world, even though most of the software developers who work in our communities don't work for the Linux Foundation. In fact, we have very few software developers at the Linux Foundation, Linus Torvalds being the most famous open source software developer. I want to briefly talk about a couple of industry trends that we're seeing that might be of interest to all of you. The first is an increasing focus on cybersecurity as it relates to all open source software, whether it be cloud computing, IoT, blockchain, or any open source software. It's important that that software be secure. Governments around the world are creating new rules and regulations about cybersecurity as it relates to open source. This week, the United States released their Cybersecurity National Implementation Plan. One of the components of that plan is creating an open source center that will help open source developers improve their projects by rewriting them in memory-safe languages such as Rust, by providing resources and funding to increase testing, cryptographic security, and more across the entire global software supply chain. In the European Union, there's much debate about the Cyber Resiliency Act, which will place new restrictions and requirements on open source projects to meet the stringent requirements of that act. The Linux Foundation is working with our member companies to make sure that these rules meet the requirements of the open source community. Finally, the number one question that I get about open source today is, how does open source meet large language model communities? What is the role of open source in LLMs? And I think the easiest way to think about this, and I hope you all will discuss this in the coming hours, is open source as it retains to large language model really is about two important things: transparency and control. You see, with large language learning models, it's important to understand what data is used to create the foundation models that generate all of the content, to understand whether that data is authentic, who created it, what rules and intellectual property govern that data. And so in the spirit of creating better transparency in large language models, the Linux Foundation is creating new ways to share that data. The first thing we did was created an open data license, our community data license agreement. This is a license just like the Apache software license or the GPL, our open source licenses for code. This is a data license that allows an easy way for people to share in a many-to-many manner data. Those large data sharing arrangements allow organizations to build large language models using data that they're confident about the security and source. We're also seeing the rise of data sharing consortium. Just this year, the Linux Foundation created the Overture Maps Foundation. This is a multi-million-dollar effort founded by Microsoft, Meta, Amazon, and TomTom to create a massive data pool for geospatial maps that will help providers augmented reality experiences and more create better applications that will help all of us in our daily lives. And it's not just about understanding data that is a requirement for transparency. It's about understanding in every aspect of the LLM foundation model pipeline how that model was created. The Linux Foundation's AI and Big Data Foundation and the PyTorch Foundation are making sure that in the emerging large language model application stack, at every step, from data cleansing to model creation to output, that there is a first-class open source component of that process. This will help us understand how foundation models work. It will allow academics to better understand and train these models in order to reduce hallucinations, increase security, and make sure that these large learning models follow ethical and safety rules that we can all agree upon. Transparency, control is an important part that open source can bring to large language models. We predict that most large language models will be specialized applications for specific vertical applications, things like healthcare, autonomous vehicle control, and more. If you build large language models, you need the ability to not only know what data goes in, to be able to use private data in cases where you do not with a large, but you also need to be able to modify those foundation models and all of the tools and improvements around those models. This is what open source really delivers, the ability to better refine models and data and really create the modern building blocks that will allow large language models to thrive at the application level, which will be the contextual relationship between vertical industry requirements and the large data sets that are built and used in the foundation models themselves. So finally, the last subject that we have around generative AI that the Linux Foundation is tracking is whether or not to allow open source contributions that are generated by AI tools. Things such as GitHub Copilot, Replit, and many of the generative AI coding tools that you see today. Today, this is a rapidly evolving area where there's risk around copyright infringement, license incompatibility, incompatibility with common ways to certify intellectual property and authenticity across the supply chain. This is evolving so rapidly. Today, we're taking a conservative approach and recommending against using those tools in major public, commonly held open source platforms. However, we do think that these tools, which create incredible productivity improvements for any developer, will get better. The traceability of data that's used to train these models, the understanding of how it's compatible with major intellectual property, and growing evolution of rules and regulations around this copyright regime will allow us to take advantage of large language model generative AI coding so that we can create better, faster software, something we all want, but do it in a way that respects the rules of sharing that have made open source so popular to date. So those are just a couple of things that I thought would be food for thought for all of you today. I wish again that I could be there in India. My daughter Nisha and my wife Sheila were hoping we could make it this time, but next time we'll try and make it for sure. And I wish you all the best in your event.
Thank you, Jim, for your valuable insights. I'm sure people here as well as online have learned a thing or two. Heading on to our final keynote of the day, we have Meghavi Chauhan. Meghavi is a director with the Technology Innovation in the City Organization in London Stock Exchange Group, based in Bangalore. She has 22 plus years of experience working with various technologies and platforms within the financial services and risk management domain, with experience on enterprise and solution architecture, design, and development. She believes in being forever in a learning mode, and in what Einstein says, the important thing is not to stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existence. Meghavi, all of us are very curious about Gen AI, and we would love for you to share your thoughts on open source in generative AI landscape. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our next speaker, Meghavi Chauhan.
Hi everyone, and it's a great pleasure to be here among all of you. Generative AI and open source, what a topic to talk about in the current times. Every day, as Mohan rightly said, we're seeing a new model coming up. Somewhere somebody is creating a GitHub repo. There's a lot of buzz about generative AI. Right? Everybody is talking about it. But what if I told you it's almost a decade-old technology? Somewhere in 2014, really, it became famous with generative adversarial networks, or GANs, as we call, which is a deep learning architecture, which can generate new data, and with which you generate realistic images, videos, text, etc. And then in 2017, really, with that famous paper, Attention is All You Need, came the transformer architecture, which underlies the large language models of today. So if it is this old, why are we suddenly talking about it? Why is everybody trying to come up with a use case involving generative AI or large language models now? I feel ChatGPT has a vital role to play here. I mean, looking back, I don't think it was a revolutionary technical content, but the user-centric approach that it took. Okay. Do I point you? Okay. Anyways, I'll continue. So it really brought about it made AI accessible to everyone. Everyone could use the tool, play around with it, understand the impact it has. And that really democratized the entire AI system. Suddenly there was this explosion of use cases coming up within generative AI. And the proprietary foundation models, suddenly all the big tech players were racing to release large language models. It at one point of time, I think, became like an AI war of sorts. And open source community is really not one to be left far behind. So within the open source community, there was tremendous efforts to come up with models which meet a lot of those computation, privacy, data demands. For instance, now you have those open source large language models like Alpaca, Vicuna, Falcon, and most recently Llama 2, right? They are becoming a very good alternatives for enterprises to some of the GPT and other large language models, which are closed models accessible only via API interfaces. So why do I feel, what really would make this open source model so relevant? So if you look at the large language models, really, the super large foundation models, they are trained on huge data sets. They have trillions of parameters. And that is the reason they also require enormous compute. So what USP the open source really brings here is the open source community came up with smaller models in some certain cases, and they were very specific for certain domain tasks. So you had a lot of those domain specific or use case specific models being created for text summarization, for Q&A, chat, etc. And what that enabled was you actually created that entire ecosystem of open source models uh, based on this certain parameters. And then you also had a lot of enterprises looking at them as alternatives. So the enterprises, the market paradigm really started shifting from bigger is better to cost efficient is better, customizable is better, more effective is better. And open source models, as we all know, right, you can customize them. You are able to have ownership of these models. You are able to, so a lot of your privacy concerns, which really are there with those closed proprietary models, are allayed by the open source models. And why do I think it's only going to get better from here? It's a lot of research is being done on coming up with certain optimization methods which will help in reducing the pre-training time of the models by around 50%. So for instance, you have this multimodal models which can be trained on multiple data sources, audio, video, text, etc. Like how the human learns from different senses. You learn from seeing, hearing, etc. So what that enables is that because you have a model which is being able to train on a lot of different data sources, it is also able to capture accurately the information about the data, and that would lead to efficient compute, because then you have a lot of irrelevant data being removed from processing. As you all know, the key modes of a large language model really is training data, model weight, and the cost of training and inference. So here, the multimodal models do help you in reducing the compute. They are compute efficient models. Then you have techniques called as transfer learning, where you are creating a model for a specific task, and then you can take that model as a starting point for a related task. So it's like if you have the knowledge of baking a bread, you can use that knowledge to bake a pizza. What this enables is you require less data for training the model. So you have techniques which are helping you be compute efficient, helping with the data scarcity issues, which a lot of enterprises are facing now with the large language models. So all this combined, and open source, you have a lot of multimodal models like Open Flamingo, Multimodal GPT, have a lot of model hubs like Hugging Face, providing models for transfer learning. So you have all this available within the open source environment. And also, if you look at the ecosystem, right, it is very important that you also build an ecosystem around the large language models in open source. So you have open source tools for everything, starting from creation of the models to model consumption to model serving. So you have an entire open source ecosystem created around supporting the entire model lifecycle. So you have, for instance, tools for orchestration, app development frameworks, vector databases, monitoring tools for outputs, for cost. Everything is there within the open source environment. And in fact, the other day I saw a GitHub repo on prompt engineering, creating this prompt engineering learning portal, which I thought was amazing, right? Who would have thought that a learning portal could be created with open sourcing? Now we have looked at a lot of good things about large language models, but the enterprises are still hesitant to adopt it fully because of ethical reasons, privacy concerns. So what can we do in this case? Ethical AI, that is a term which is becoming and getting tremendous thrush because of all these ethical concerns, privacy concerns. So it is about how we are able to create explainable AI systems, how we are able to create trustworthy AI systems. And governments are doing their bit by creating laws, regulations around it. Industries, the organizations are doing their bit by having AI governance frameworks, risk functions. As Jim mentioned, the open source industry is also doing a lot by coming up with open data licenses, open standards, open frameworks around using both the data and the language. And also, for instance, last week, C2PA specification, they came up with an open technical standard where you could create, you could digitally stamp the image online. So there's a lot of concern with deep fakes online. So they came up with how can you digitally stamp your image online and explain the authenticity of the image, explain the origin of the image. So as with the open source community, right, we are all very passionate about technology. So what is it within the model architectures that we could do for open source? There's a research which I came across around neurosymbolic AI. So to explain it, let me take you to how a human brain works. So Daniel Kahneman in his book about thinking fast and slow, he put across a concept of system 1 and system 2 thinking of how a brain works. So system 1 thinking is how instantaneous responses, how intuitive you are, responses from your experience. So that's pretty much how the current large language models work. And system 2 thinking is slower thinking based on rational logic. So the research says that what if you are able to combine the system 1 and system 2 thinking within generative AI systems? In that case, you will be able to give the reasoning ability to a computer system. And then a paper came out on tree of thought. I mean, all of you know about the different prompting techniques and with the large language models and the chain of thought and other prompting techniques. So this one talks about tree of thought prompting techniques. And what they are trying to do is they are trying to combine the large language model architecture with your decision trees and knowledge graphs. So what this will enable you to do is, it will enable you to backtrack and understand the reasoning behind an outcome of an AI system. So if you are able to explain the outcome of an AI system, you are able to explain the reasoning behind, why a particular outcome has been achieved by a large language model or a generative AI system. You can pretty much create an explainable AI system and a trustworthy AI system. So I kind of wanted to leave with this thought on how really can we as technologists work towards creating those architecture, adopting those architectures which will lead to creating those explainable AI systems. And with open source, we as a community, we have a power of collective community. We do have a power to and the ability really to change the future of a technology, the way that it behaves. And I think with the generative AI, we really need to work towards creating more safer systems, more explainable systems, more trustworthy systems. And because AI has so much good to kind of, look at a lot of different concerns, but we should just work towards creating safer systems. So with that, thank you so much for listening to me and have a good day of learning and collaboration.
Thank you so much, Meghavi, for sharing your thoughts on very crucial aspects of GenAI. We would also like to just apologize for a small tech that we faced. Now that we are done with the keynotes, we'll just have a short 5-minute break, and we will reconvene inside 5 minutes with the next section, which is the tech talks for the blockchain.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. I'm sure more I'm sure I'll ask Dr. if we can connect later. I stay in Melbourne. Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, I think this outer ring road, there's so many different it's like full of companies.
It's not just focus on one specific product, but also going to so while all the business teams are focused on this product, someone else is focusing on
So, is there any work being done on the live
just been working on the product. It's an interesting
because especially for exchanges, we have this entire whole space business. So for exchanges, we were looking at how we can look at some of those services.
Hello, I'm audible. Just checking.